At the frontier auction, I bought an old chest for $1. Inside were sleeping, beautiful women. The frontier town looked like it had been forgotten by time. Dust covered everything. The wooden buildings leaned slightly, as if they were tired of standing. A wind blew through the street and carried the smell of dry earth and old leather. The narrator, a man who traveled from town to town for work, stepped down from his horse and looked around. He had come to this place because he heard there would be an auction. He had been traveling for weeks, working on farms, fixing fences, and doing odd jobs. Money was always tight. Sometimes he ate only once a day. Sometimes he slept with a blanket on the hard ground. But he kept going because he believed there was always a better tomorrow. When he reached the center of town, he saw a small crowd gathered near a wooden stage. A man stood on the stage with a loud voice. That man was the auctioneer. He wore a dusty coat and a wide hat. His face was sunburned, and his eyes looked sharp and tired. He held a small gavel in his hand. "Today we sell the town's abandoned goods," the auctioneer called out. "If you want something, you better bid fast." The narrator moved closer, curious. He had seen auctions before, but this one felt different. It felt like people were selling pieces of their lives. Old furniture, broken tools, and dusty boxes were placed in front of the stage. Each item had a story, even if no one knew it. The auction began. A man bought a rusty plow for a few dollars. A woman bought a set of old dishes. A child watched with wide eyes, holding a piece of candy. The narrator watched too, but he did not have much money. He only had a few dollars left, and he needed to be careful. As the auction continued, the narrator noticed a large wooden chest at the back of the stage. It was worn and scratched. The lid was closed, and the lock looked old. The chest seemed forgotten, like nobody cared about it. It was not shiny or expensive. It did not look like something worth buying. The narrator felt a strange pull toward the chest. Maybe it was because he was tired of seeing only old and useless items. Maybe it was because he liked the idea of finding something hidden. Or maybe it was simply because he had nothing better to spend his money on. The auctioneer began to call for bids on the chest. "Who wants this old chest?" he asked. "Starting price, $1. The narrator's heart beat faster. He had exactly $1. If he spent it, he would have nothing left. But the chest felt like a challenge. He looked around, and nobody else seemed interested. The crowd was focused on other items. The narrator raised his hand slowly. $1, he said quietly. The auctioneer looked surprised. $1 bid, he announced. He waited, but no one else raised their hand. The narrator held his breath. He was not sure if anyone would bid more. A moment passed, then another. The auctioneer looked at the crowd, waiting for a response. No one spoke. The narrator felt a small rush of hope. "Sold," the auctioneer finally said. "To the man in the brown coat." The narrator's heart sank a little. He had won the chest, but he had spent his last dollar. He could feel the weight of his choice. He also felt a strange excitement. Maybe the chest would be useful. Maybe it would contain something valuable. He paid the auctioneer and carefully lifted the chest. It was heavier than it looked. The wood felt old and rough under his hands. He could see that the chest had been repaired before. The nails were uneven, and the lock was old and worn. The narrator walked away from the auction, carrying the chest like a heavy secret. People watched him, but no one said anything. The town seemed quiet. It was as if the chest had made the air feel strange. He walked toward the inn at the edge of town. The inn was small, with a sign that read, The Lone Star. Inside, the smell of stew filled the air. The fire in the stove crackled softly. The innkeeper, a woman with kind eyes, looked up when he entered. "Back from the auction?" she asked. The narrator nodded. "Yes." She noticed the chest. "That looks heavy. What did you buy?" "Just an old chest," he replied. He tried to sound calm, but his voice was not steady. He did not want to tell her he had spent his last dollar. The innkeeper nodded. "Well, if you need a room, it's $5 a night." The narrator swallowed. "I don't have $5. The innkeeper's face softened. "You can work it off. Help me with chores. Sweep the floor, fix the fence, wash dishes. I can trust you." The narrator felt relieved. He nodded. "Thank you." The innkeeper led him to a small room in the back. The room was simple: a bed, a chair, and a small table. The window was cracked, but it let in fresh air. The narrator set the chest down carefully near the bed. He sat on the bed and stared at the chest. He had bought it for $1, and he still did not know why he felt so drawn to it. He reached out and touched the lid. The wood was cold. The lock was rusted, but still strong. He tried to lift the lid, but it did not move. The narrator sighed. He was tired, and he wanted to sleep. He had been traveling for days, and his body felt heavy. He decided to wait until morning to open the chest. Before he slept, he looked around the room. There was a small mirror on the wall. In it, he saw his own reflection. His face looked worn. His eyes looked tired. He realized he had been living a hard life for a long time. He did not have a family. He did not have a home. He had only the road. He closed his eyes and tried to rest, but he could not stop thinking about the chest. Something about it felt strange. He could not explain it. It felt like it held more than just old wood and metal. In the middle of the night, the wind outside grew stronger. It rattled the window and made the room feel colder. The narrator woke up from a deep sleep. His heart beat fast. He sat up and listened. At first, he heard only the wind, but then he heard a faint sound, a small creak, like something moving inside the chest. He stared at it in the dark. The sound came again. He held his breath. He waited. The sound came once more. It was soft, but clear. The narrator stood up and walked slowly toward the chest. He placed his hand on the lid. It felt warmer now, as if it had been touched recently. His fingers trembled. He tried to open the lock. It would not move. He pulled and pushed, but the lid stayed shut. The sound inside continued, like a small breath. He felt a sudden fear. He was not sure what was inside. He went back to bed, but he could not sleep. The sound stayed in his mind. He kept thinking, what if something is alive inside? The thought scared him, but it also made him curious. He decided that in the morning he would open the chest. He would find out what was inside, no matter what it was. He lay down again and stared at the ceiling. The wind continued to blow outside. The chest sat quietly in the corner, like a sleeping animal, and the narrator realized that this night would change everything. He did not know how yet, but he could feel it deep inside. Something about the chest was not ordinary. Something about it was waiting. He finally drifted back to sleep, but his dreams were filled with strange images. A wooden chest, a hidden secret, a mysterious sound, and a feeling of danger mixed with hope. The morning sunlight entered the room through the cracked window. It made the dust in the air shine like tiny stars. The narrator woke up slowly, still thinking about the chest. His body felt heavy from the long trip, but his mind was awake and alert. The sound he heard during the night stayed in his memory. It made him feel uneasy, like something was watching him. He sat on the bed and stared at the chest. It looked normal again in the daylight. The wood was old and scratched, but there was nothing strange about it. Yet the narrator knew that the sound had been real. He was not imagining it. He stood up and walked toward the chest. The lock was old and rusty, but he could see the shape of the keyhole. He tried to pull the lock open, but it did not move. The metal was stiff. He pushed harder, and the chest shifted slightly, but still did not open. The narrator took a deep breath. He knew he needed to open it. He needed to know what was inside. He walked to the small table and found a knife. It was not a good tool for the job, but it was the only thing he had. He returned to the chest and placed the knife near the lock. He pressed the blade into the metal and tried to force it open. The lock did not break easily. It felt like it was holding on to something. After a few minutes, the lock finally gave way. The chest opened with a loud creak, as if it had been sleeping for a long time. The narrator stepped back and stared inside. At first, he saw only blankets and old cloth. He expected to see old clothes or tools. But then he noticed something moving. A small hand moved slowly beneath the blanket. The narrator's heart jumped into his throat. He leaned closer and saw a woman lying inside. Her face was pale and her hair was dark. She was asleep, but she looked like she had been asleep for a long time. She was wrapped in a thick blanket, and her breathing was slow and quiet. The narrator was shocked. He had not expected to find a person inside the chest. He felt a mix of fear and guilt. He had bought the chest for $1, not knowing that it contained a human being. He had almost trapped someone inside without meaning to. He looked around the room, as if he might find someone else who could explain this. But he was alone. The inn was quiet. No one was watching. He gently touched the woman's shoulder. She stirred slightly, but did not wake. The narrator realized that she was weak. Her skin was cold. She needed help. He carefully lifted her out of the chest. Her body was light, as if she had no strength. He placed her on the bed and covered her with a blanket. She remained asleep. The narrator stood there, unsure of what to do next. He thought of calling the innkeeper, but he was afraid. He did not want to cause trouble. He also did not want to make the woman feel scared. He did not know if she was dangerous or if she had been harmed. He decided to wait. He sat on the chair and watched her. He tried to think of a plan. After a few minutes, he heard a sound again. It came from the chest. He turned and looked inside. The blanket moved. Another hand appeared. This time, the narrator did not feel fear. He felt a strange sadness. He opened the chest again. Inside was another woman. She was also asleep. Her hair was light brown, and her face looked tired. She was wrapped in a blanket, and her breathing was slow. The narrator could not believe his eyes. 2 women were inside the chest. He had bought the chest for $1, and he had found 2 people inside. He felt like he was in a dream. He gently lifted the second woman out and placed her on the bed beside the first. Both of them were weak and pale. Their clothes were old and worn. Their hands were cold. The narrator sat down again, his mind racing. He tried to understand what was happening. He thought about the auction. He thought about the abandoned items. He thought about the people who used to own the chest. Why would someone hide 2 women inside a chest? Who would do such a thing? And why were they asleep? The narrator felt a sudden anger. He felt angry at the people who would treat others like this. He felt angry at the world for allowing such cruelty. He did not know these women, but he already felt responsible for them. He decided to act. He needed to find help. He needed to protect them. The narrator quietly left the room and went to the innkeeper. He did not want to alarm her, but he needed someone he could trust. He found her in the kitchen stirring a pot of stew. The smell of food filled the air. "Ma'am?" he said softly. The innkeeper turned and looked at him. "What is it?" The narrator hesitated. He did not know how to explain. He did not want to sound crazy. "I need your help," he said. "There are 2 women in the chest I bought at the auction." The innkeeper's eyes widened. "What?" The narrator nodded. "Yes, they are asleep, and they look weak." The innkeeper's face turned serious. She wiped her hands on her apron and followed him to the room. When they entered, the innkeeper gasped. She had not expected to see real people. She looked at the women carefully, then looked at the narrator. "This is terrible," she said. "They need medical attention." The narrator nodded. "I know, but I don't know what to do. I have no money, and I don't know who they are." The innkeeper thought for a moment. "There is a doctor in town," she said. "He is not wealthy, but he helps people when he can. I will go get him." The narrator felt grateful. "Thank you." The innkeeper left quickly. The narrator sat beside the women and watched them. He felt a strange connection. He did not know them, but he felt like their lives mattered. He felt like he had to protect them. The women remained asleep for a long time. The narrator waited patiently. He tried to keep his mind calm. He watched their breathing, hoping they would wake soon. When the doctor arrived, he looked at the women and shook his head. "They are in a bad condition," he said. "They have been trapped and not fed properly. They need rest and food." The narrator nodded. "Can you help them?" The doctor looked at him carefully. "Yes, but you must promise to keep them safe. Whoever put them in the chest may come looking for them." The narrator felt a chill. He had not thought of that. He had only thought of helping them. Now he realized there was danger. "I promise," he said. The doctor gave the women some medicine and left. The narrator thanked him. He felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. He had promised to protect them, but he did not know how. He returned to the bed and watched the women. He could see that their faces were peaceful, but their bodies were weak. He felt a sense of responsibility. He thought about the future. He thought about what would happen if the kidnappers returned. He knew he needed to act quickly. But for now, the women slept. The room was quiet. The sun shone through the window and the dust floated in the light. The narrator sat in a chair and waited, wondering what would happen next. The women slept for a long time. The narrator sat in the chair beside the bed, watching them. He felt the weight of his promise. He had promised the doctor that he would protect them, but he did not know how. The thought of danger made him feel nervous, but he tried to stay calm. He knew that panic would not help. The inn was quiet during the afternoon. The innkeeper was busy in the kitchen. The sound of pots and pans echoed through the walls. Outside, the town moved slowly. People walked by the windows, going about their daily lives. The narrator could hear the sound of horses, the distant calls of merchants, and the quiet murmur of voices. He tried to think about what the women might have experienced. He wondered who they were, and why someone would hide them in a chest. He felt a deep sadness. He could not imagine being trapped in a dark box, unable to move, unable to breathe fresh air, and not knowing when help would come. The narrator decided to look for clues. He carefully searched the chest again. He wanted to know if there was any sign of who had put the women inside. He moved the blankets and looked under them. He found a small piece of cloth with a symbol stitched on it. It was a simple design, like a flower. He held it in his hand and studied it. The symbol looked familiar. but he could not remember where he had seen it. He placed the cloth on the table and continued searching. He found a small note hidden in the lining of the chest. The note was old and faded, but he could still read some words. "Do not trust the men of Blackridge," the note said. The narrator's heart raced. Blackridge was a place not far from the town. It was known for bandits and thieves. The narrator had heard stories about the men there. They were dangerous, and they did not care about other people's lives. He looked back at the women. They were still asleep. The note made him feel even more worried. He realized that the women might have escaped from Blackridge, or someone might have taken them from there. He felt angry at the men who had done this. The narrator decided that he needed to know more. He needed to understand what the women had been through. He knew that the women might wake up soon. He wanted to be ready to listen. He waited patiently. After a while, one of the women opened her eyes. She blinked slowly, as if waking from a long dream. Her eyes were tired, but they looked gentle. She stared at the narrator for a moment, unsure of where she was. The narrator spoke softly. "You're safe now. You are in an inn. You are in a chest. You are free." The woman did not speak at first. She looked confused. Then her eyes filled with tears. She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. The narrator gently helped her. "Don't worry," he said. "I am here to help you." The woman looked at him and whispered, "Thank you." Her voice was quiet and shaky. She looked like she had not spoken in a long time. The narrator asked her, "What is your name?" The woman hesitated. She looked down at her hands. "My name is Lila," she said finally. The narrator nodded. "Lila, do you remember what happened?" Lila looked away. She seemed afraid to speak. After a moment, she whispered, "We were taken. We were forced to leave our home. We were told to be quiet. We were told to hide." The narrator felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to ask more, but he also did not want to frighten her. He waited for her to continue. Lila looked at the other woman. The other woman was still asleep. Lila spoke softly. "Her name is Mira. We were together when we were taken." The narrator felt a wave of relief. At least he now knew their names. He felt like he could connect with them more. Lila continued, "We were taken by men from Blackridge. They said they were going to bring us to a new town. They said we would work. They said we would be safe. But it was not true. They treated us like objects. They locked us in the chest." The narrator listened carefully, his hands clenched into fists. He felt anger burning inside him. He could not believe that people could treat others like this. He asked gently, "Why did they hide you in a chest?" Lila looked down again. Her voice shook. "They were afraid of the law. They were afraid someone would find us. They said if anyone knew, they would take us away. They said we were worth money." The narrator felt sick. He had never felt such anger before. He wanted to find the men who did this and bring them to justice. But he also knew that the women needed safety now. He asked, "Do you know where you were taken from?" Lila nodded slowly. "We were taken from a small village near the river. We were working in a farm. We had a simple life. Then the men came." The narrator nodded. He did not ask more. He could see that the memories were painful. He did not want to force her to speak. Just then, the other woman stirred. She opened her eyes slowly. Her face looked tired. She looked at the narrator and Lila. The narrator spoke again. "Hello, my name is Thomas. I bought the chest at the auction. I did not know you were inside." The woman blinked and looked at him. Her eyes were bright, but they looked frightened. She took a deep breath. "My name is Mira," she said softly. Thomas nodded. "Mira, Leela, you are safe now. We are going to help you." Mira looked at Lila. She looked worried. "Do you think they will come back?" Thomas hesitated. He did not want to lie. I don't know," he said honestly, "but I will do everything I can to keep you safe." Mira's eyes filled with fear. She hugged Lila gently. The two women looked at each other like they had been through something impossible. They held on to each other as if their strength came from the bond between them. Thomas felt a deep sense of responsibility. He realized that he could not just sit and wait. He needed to act. He needed to protect them. He thought about the note and the words, Black Ridge. He knew that the men from Black Ridge were dangerous. He knew that they would not give up easily. Thomas decided to speak with the sheriff. The sheriff was the only person who could help. He needed to warn him about the women and the danger. He walked out of the room and went down the stairs. The innkeeper was in the kitchen. She looked up when she saw him. "They woke up," she said quietly. Thomas nodded. "Yes, they need protection." The innkeeper looked worried. "Do you think the men will come back?" Thomas shook his head. "I don't know, but I can't take that risk." The innkeeper nodded. "Then you should talk to the sheriff." Thomas left the inn and walked to the sheriff's office. The building was simple, with a small sign that read Sheriff. Inside, the sheriff sat at a desk writing notes. He was a tall man with a stern face. Thomas explained the situation quickly. He told the sheriff about the chest, the auction, and the women. He showed the note with the words Black Ridge. The sheriff listened carefully. His face turned serious. "This is dangerous," he said. "If the men from Black Ridge find them, they will not hesitate to take them back." Thomas nodded. "I know. We need to protect them." The sheriff leaned back in his chair. "I will help," he said, "but you must be careful. The men from Black Ridge are not ordinary thieves. They are organized. They work fast." Thomas felt a small relief. "Thank you." The sheriff stood up. "I will send a deputy to watch the inn. We will also send a message to nearby towns. If the men show up, we will be ready." Thomas nodded. "That is good." The sheriff looked at him and said, "But you must also prepare to leave. If the women stay here, it may be too risky. We should move them to a safer place." Thomas felt the weight of the decision. He looked back at the inn and thought of the women. He knew that leaving would be difficult, but he also knew it was the right choice. "I will do it," he said. The sheriff nodded. "Good. You should prepare tonight. We will move them at dawn." Thomas thanked the sheriff and walked back to the inn. His mind was full of thoughts. He felt worried, but also determined. He knew that the women's lives depended on him. When he returned to the room, the women were sitting on the bed, talking quietly. They looked at him when he entered. "We are leaving," Thomas said. "At dawn." Lila's eyes widened. "Where will we go?" Thomas looked at them. "Somewhere safe? Somewhere far from Black Ridge?" Mira nodded slowly. "We trust you." Thomas felt a strong emotion. He had never felt such responsibility before. He promised himself that he would not fail them. That night, the inn was quiet. Thomas watched over the women. He listened for any strange sounds outside. He stayed awake, ready to protect them. He knew that danger was coming, but he also knew that he was not alone. The night was quiet, but it felt heavy. The air was still, and the stars shone faintly in the sky. The inn seemed calm, but Thomas knew that danger was close. The sheriff had warned him about the men from Blackridge. Thomas could not stop thinking about the possibility that they might return. He sat in the room with Lila and Mira, watching them sleep. They looked peaceful, but their faces still showed the pain of what they had experienced. Thomas felt a deep sadness. He wanted to protect them, but he knew that protection was not easy. It required courage, planning, and quick thinking. He checked the door and the windows again. The lock on the door was old, but it was strong. The windows had simple wooden bars. Thomas knew that these were not enough to stop a determined group of men. He needed a better plan. He quietly walked to the innkeeper's room and knocked on the door. She opened it slightly and looked at him. "Is everything okay?" she whispered. Thomas nodded. "I need your help." The innkeeper looked worried. "What is it?" Thomas lowered his voice. "The men from Blackridge may come tonight. We need to prepare. Can you help me?" The innkeeper's eyes widened. "Yes. What should I do?" Thomas explained his plan. He wanted to move the women to a secret room in the inn. The innkeeper had once told him about a small storage room behind the kitchen. It was used to store old supplies and tools. Thomas thought it could be a safe hiding place. The innkeeper nodded. I know the room. It is small, but it can hide them." Thomas thanked her. "Good. We must move them quietly. They must not hear us." The innkeeper agreed. She took a deep breath. "Let's do it." They returned to the room. Lila and Mira were still asleep. Thomas gently shook Lila's shoulder. She opened her eyes slowly. "Thomas?" she whispered. "Yes," he said softly. "We need to move. Please be quiet." Lila nodded. She looked scared, but she trusted him. Thomas turned to Mira and shook her gently. Mira woke up and blinked, trying to understand what was happening. "We must hide," Thomas said. Now, the women stood up carefully. Their legs felt weak, but they tried to move. Thomas guided them through the hallway, away from the main area. The innkeeper followed behind, carrying a small lantern. The secret room was behind the kitchen, hidden by a stack of old boxes. The innkeeper moved the boxes aside and opened the door. The room was small and dark. It had a small window, but it was covered by a thick curtain. Thomas helped the women enter the room. He placed a blanket on the floor so they could rest. The women sat down and looked at each other. "Thank you," Lila whispered. Thomas nodded. "You are safe here. I promise." The innkeeper closed the door quietly. Thomas and the innkeeper returned to the main room and waited. They listened carefully. The silence felt loud. Time passed slowly. Thomas felt his heart beat faster with every minute. He kept thinking about the men from Blackridge. He imagined them searching the town. He imagined them coming into the inn. He imagined the women being taken again. Then, in the distance, Thomas heard a sound. It was the sound of horses. The sound of horses was not unusual in a frontier town, but this sound felt different. It sounded like a group of horses, moving fast. The sound of boots followed. Thomas held his breath. The innkeeper's face turned pale. "They are here," she whispered. Thomas nodded. "Stay calm." The men arrived at the inn. Thomas could hear them talking outside. Their voices were rough and loud. They sounded confident, like they believed they could take whatever they wanted. Thomas listened carefully. He could not hear every word, but he could hear one phrase clearly. "Where is the chest?" Thomas felt his stomach tighten. The men were looking for the chest. They knew it had been sold. They knew it had been opened. They were looking for the women. Thomas moved quietly to the door. He listened again. The men spoke again, louder this time. "We know the chest was bought by a man in a brown coat," one of the men said. "He is here. We will find him." Thomas felt a chill. He knew that the men would not stop until they found the women. He had to act fast. He walked to the kitchen and spoke to the innkeeper. "We must distract them. We need to buy time." The innkeeper nodded. "What can we do?" Thomas thought quickly. "We will pretend the chest was sold to someone else. We will act like we do not know anything." The innkeeper looked nervous. "Will that work?" Thomas nodded. "It may. We have to try." They moved to the front of the inn. The men were already outside, looking around. Thomas stepped forward, pretending to be calm. The innkeeper stood beside him. One of the men approached. He was tall and had a scar on his face. He looked dangerous. His eyes were cold. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Thomas forced a calm voice. "Outside. I run this inn. What do you want?" The man looked at him. "We are looking for a chest sold at the auction." Thomas nodded slowly. "The auction was yesterday. The chest was sold. But I do not know where it went." The man's eyes narrowed. "You don't know?" Thomas shook his head. "No, we have not seen it." The man stared at Thomas for a moment. He seemed suspicious, but he did not have proof. He looked at the innkeeper. "Is there a room upstairs?" the man asked. The innkeeper nodded. "Yes." The man looked at Thomas again. "We will search." Thomas's heart raced. He could not let them search the rooms. The women were hiding in the secret room. If the men found them, it would be disaster. He needed to distract them again. Thomas said, "Wait. Before you search, you should rest. You look tired. The road is long." The man looked surprised. "Why would we rest?" Thomas smiled slightly. "Because the sheriff is nearby. If you stay, he may come. If you leave now, you can avoid trouble." The man paused. He looked at the innkeeper. He looked at Thomas. He seemed to think for a moment. Then he nodded. "Fine. But we will be back." The men left the inn and mounted their horses. Thomas watched them go, feeling a mix of relief and fear. They were gone for now, but they would return. Thomas knew this. He returned to the secret room and checked on the women. They were safe. They looked scared, but relieved. Thomas sat with them and tried to calm them. He told them that the men had left, but he did not hide the truth. "They may return," he said. "We must be ready." Lila nodded. "We are ready." Mira looked at Thomas. "Thank you," she said softly.
"You risked your life for us." Thomas shook his head. "No."
"I did not. I just did what was right." The women smiled slightly. Their faces looked tired, but there was a small spark of hope. Thomas realized that this night had changed him. He had learned what courage meant. He had learned that protection was not easy. He had learned that the world could be cruel, but also that there were people who could be kind. The night passed slowly. Thomas stayed awake, listening for any sound. The women slept again, this time in the secret room. Thomas sat outside the door, ready to protect them. When morning came, the sun rose slowly. The town began to wake. The danger felt smaller in the daylight, but Thomas knew it was not gone. He knew that they had to leave. They could not stay in the inn. They had to travel to a safer place. They had to escape. Thomas looked at the women and said, "We will leave today. We will travel to a town far away. We will be safe." The women nodded. They trusted him. They were ready. Thomas took a deep breath. He knew the journey would be hard, but he was determined. He would not let the men from Black Ridge take them again. He gathered supplies and prepared for the escape. The road ahead was uncertain, but Thomas was ready to face it. The morning light felt different that day. It was not just the bright sun or the warm air. It was the feeling of a new beginning. Thomas looked at Lila and Mira and saw something he had not seen before. They were still tired, but their eyes looked stronger. They were ready to move forward. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with hope. Thomas knew the town was not safe anymore. The men from Black Ridge had visited the inn and asked about the chest. They would return. Thomas could feel it. He could feel the danger like a dark cloud hanging over the town. He had to move fast. He went to the innkeeper and thanked her again for helping. "I cannot thank you enough," he said. "You saved them." The innkeeper smiled softly. "You did what you had to do," she replied. "But I will not forget this. If you ever need help, you can come back." Thomas nodded. He felt grateful. He also felt a strong sadness. He had grown attached to the inn and the kind people there, but he knew he could not stay. He had to protect the women. Thomas returned to the room and helped the women prepare. He packed food, water, and blankets. He also packed a small bag with clothes for them. He tried to be careful not to bring too much. The road would be long and they would need to move quickly. Lila and Mira packed what little they had. They looked at each other, and Thomas could see the sadness in their faces. They were leaving the only place they had known for a long time. They were leaving behind the memory of being trapped. But they were also leaving behind the danger, Thomas told them. "We will travel quietly. We will avoid the main roads. We will go through the hills and the small paths. It will take longer, but it will be safer." Lila nodded. "We trust you," she said. Mira looked at Thomas. Why are you helping us?" she asked softly. Thomas paused. He did not know how to answer. He had never thought of himself as a hero. He was just a man who had bought a chest. But now he felt like he had a purpose. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe because it is the right thing to do. Maybe because I could not ignore what happened. Maybe because I believe people deserve kindness." Mira nodded slowly. "That is a good reason." Thomas felt a small smile. He was glad they understood. He felt a connection with them, a bond that went beyond words. He realized that helping them had changed him. It had made him feel more human. They left the inn quietly. The innkeeper watched them from the door, her eyes filled with worry. Thomas waved goodbye. The women waved too. They did not know if they would ever return, but they were grateful. Thomas led them through the town, staying away from the main street. He kept his eyes open, watching for any sign of danger. The town seemed calm, but Thomas knew that calm could be a trap. He knew that the men from Black Ridge could be hiding nearby. They reached the edge of the town and entered a small path that led into the hills. The path was narrow and rocky. It was difficult to walk, but it was quiet. Thomas knew this was the safest route. The women walked slowly. Their legs were weak from being trapped for so long. Thomas supported them when they needed help. He carried their bags when they were tired. He did everything he could to make the journey easier. The day was long. The sun was hot and the wind blew dust into their faces. Thomas felt his own strength fading, but he did not show it. He kept going. He knew the women depended on him. At one point, they stopped near a small stream. The water was clear and cold. Thomas filled their bottles and let them drink. The women looked at the water with relief. It was the first time they had tasted fresh water in a long time. Lila sat on a rock and looked at Thomas. "Thank you," she said again. "You saved our lives." Thomas shook his head. "You saved yourselves," he said. "I just helped." Mira smiled softly. "You helped more than you know." Thomas felt a warm feeling in his chest. He felt like he was finally doing something meaningful. He felt like his life had a purpose. They continued walking. The hills grew steeper and the path became more difficult. The women struggled, but they kept moving. Thomas could see their determination. Papa and Baba. He felt proud of them. As evening approached, they found a small clearing in the hills. It was hidden by trees and bushes. Thomas thought it was a good place to rest. He made a small campfire and cooked some food. The women ate slowly, but they ate. It was a small victory. That night, Thomas sat near the fire and listened to the sounds of the hills. The wind moved through the trees. The stars shone brightly. It was quiet and peaceful. For the first time in a long time, Thomas felt calm. Lila and Mira sat close together. They talked quietly, sharing small stories about their lives before the danger. They spoke about their home, their families, and the simple moments that made them happy. Thomas listened. He felt honored that they trusted him enough to share their memories. After a while, the women fell asleep. Thomas stayed awake, watching the fire. He thought about the journey ahead. He knew they still had a long way to go. He knew that danger could appear at any time, but he also knew that they had already come far. They had escaped the men from Black Ridge. They had survived the chest. They had survived the night at the inn. Now they were free. Thomas thought about the chest he had bought for $1. He thought about how that simple purchase had changed his life. He thought about the two women who had been trapped inside. He thought about the power of small actions. He realized that sometimes the smallest choice can change everything. A single dollar, a simple act of kindness, a promise to protect. The next morning, they continued their journey. They traveled for many days, avoiding the main roads. They slept in hidden places. They kept moving. Thomas guided them carefully, always watching for danger. During the journey, the women began to regain their strength. Their faces looked healthier. Their eyes looked brighter. They began to smile more. Thomas felt happy to see their progress. One day, they reached a small town far from Black Ridge. It was peaceful and quiet. The people were friendly. Thomas felt relieved. He knew this town would be safer. He took the women to a small house owned by a kind family. The family offered them food and a place to stay. The women thanked Thomas with tears in their eyes. "This is where we will stay," Thomas said. "You will be safe here." Lila and Mira hugged him. "We will never forget you," Lila said. Mira nodded. "You gave us a new life." Thomas felt emotional. He did not know what to say. He simply nodded. He knew he could not stay forever. He had his own life to return to. But he also knew that he had done something important. He had helped two people find safety and hope. Before leaving, Thomas gave them a small bag of supplies. He also gave them the cloth with the symbol from the chest. "This may help you one day," he said. "It may remind you of what you survived." Lila took the cloth carefully. "We will keep it," she said. Thomas smiled. "Good." He walked away from the house feeling a strange emptiness. He felt like he was leaving behind something he cared about. But he also felt proud. He had done the right thing. As he walked back toward the road, He looked back one last time. Lila and Mira were standing in the doorway watching him go. They waved. Thomas waved back. He continued his journey, carrying the memory of the women with him. He felt changed. He felt stronger. He felt more human. The chest remained behind, empty and forgotten. But Thomas knew it would never be just a chest again. It would always be a reminder of the day he chose kindness. And he knew that his life would never be the same.